A story that began with a perfect picture, a young, beautiful, spirited woman waiting for the birth of her first child. Her name was Lacy Peterson. Lacy was born on May 4th, 1975, in Modesto, California. Her life seemed ordinary, even ideal. She was known as warm, cheerful, and full of kindness. Those who knew her always described Lacy as someone who brought smiles everywhere she went. In 1997, Lacy met a man named Scott Peterson. From the outside, Scott looked perfect, handsome, charming, and smooth-talking. Their relationship developed quickly, and they married that same year. The couple then bought a small home in Modesto, a quiet town where they hoped to build their future. To many people, Lacy and Scott's marriage looked harmonious. They shared vacations, spent time with family, and talked about their dreams. Lacy worked as a substitute teacher and was active in community activities, while Scott ran a small agricultural business.
But, as in many dark tales, behind the perfect appearance, something sinister was hiding. By the end of 2002, Lacy was 8 months pregnant. She was excited to welcome their baby boy, already named Connor, even before birth. To her family, Lacy was the embodiment of a loving mother-to-be, someone who had long awaited this moment. But behind her smile were faint signs no one recognized, a shadow that would soon turn this love story into one of America's most infamous tragedies.
December 24, 2002, Christmas Eve. For many families, this was a day of joy, a time to gather, prepare meals, exchange gifts, and share warmth. But in the Peterson home in Modesto, things were different. That morning, Lacy, 8 months pregnant, appeared healthy. She had plans to shop for dinner and then take her dog, a golden retriever named Mackenzie, for a walk. Scott, her husband, said he would go fishing, alone, at the San Francisco Bay, about 90 miles from their home. A strange choice for Christmas Eve. Around 10 a.m., a neighbor reported seeing Lacy walking Mackenzie in the neighborhood. That was one of the last known sightings of her alive. Hours later, something unsettling happened. Another neighbor found Mackenzie wandering alone, leash still attached. There was no sign of Lacy, only the confused dog pacing aimlessly. That evening, Scott returned from his trip. He said the house was empty, with no trace of Lacy. He showered, washed his clothes, and then called Lacy's mother, Sharon Rocha, to ask if Lacy was there. When the family realized she was truly missing, they contacted the police. That night, as families celebrated Christmas, news spread across Modesto. A pregnant woman had vanished. Police launched an immediate search. They combed neighborhoods, parks, and rivers. Volunteers joined in. Posters with Lacy's smiling face spread everywhere, a haunting symbol of both hope and mystery. But there was no trace of her, and soon investigators' attention turned to Scott Peterson. Rather than panic or grief, he appeared calm, far too calm for a man whose pregnant wife was missing. From that night on, police intensified their focus. Volunteers searched from air, land, and sea. The community rallied, but suspicion toward Scott grew stronger. What disturbed people most was Scott's behavior. In interviews, he seemed detached, emotionless. At times, he even smiled faintly, as though nothing was wrong. Then, weeks later, a shocking revelation surfaced. A woman named Amber Frey came forward. She said she was Scott's girlfriend.
Amber claimed Scott told her he was a widower, his wife had died. In reality, Lacy was still alive and 8 months pregnant. The world was stunned.
Amber agreed to work with police. She recorded phone calls with Scott, proving that even after Laci disappeared, he was trying to maintain a romantic relationship with her. For investigators, this revealed a motive. Scott wanted freedom, a new life, and his lies began to paint a disturbing picture. His alibi raised more questions. He insisted he was fishing at the bay when Laci vanished. Months later, her remains would be discovered in that very same location.
Piece by piece, the puzzle grew darker. The motive, the lies, the strange behavior, all pointed in one direction. 4 months passed with no answers. Hope slowly faded. But in April 2003, everything changed. On the shore of San Francisco Bay, not far from Scott's fishing spot, a passerby discovered a body. The remains of a woman, decomposed by time and water. Nearby, the tiny body of a baby. Investigators believed it was Connor, Laci's unborn child. The discovery shook the nation. What had been speculation was now confirmed. Laci Peterson was dead. The family was devastated. Sharon Rocha, Laci's mother, collapsed in grief. Across America, people mourned a woman and child they had never met but felt connected to.
And for police, this was the missing link. The bodies had surfaced right where Scott claimed to be that Christmas Eve. It was no coincidence. On April 18, 2003, police arrested Scott Peterson in San Diego. But what he carried with him shocked the public. Thousands of dollars in cash, multiple cell phones, camping gear, knives, and his hair dyed blonde. Everything suggested he was planning to run. He was charged with the murder of his wife and unborn son. And as the trial approached, the world prepared for one of the most infamous court cases of the decade. The trial began in June 2004. The courtroom was packed, the media relentless, every word, every glance broadcast nationwide. Prosecutors argued Scott killed his wife to start a new life with Amber Frey. They showed his lies, his infidelity, and the chilling fact that the bodies were found at his fishing spot. Amber testified, her voice trembling. She told the jury how Scott pretended to be a widower. The taped phone calls revealed a man more focused on romance than on his missing wife.
The defense countered. There was no direct evidence, no murder weapon, no witnesses, no blood. They claimed the case was built on coincidence and suspicion. But Scott's demeanor hurt him. He sat emotionless, detached, even smug at times. By November 2004, after months of testimony, the jury returned with their verdict. Scott Peterson was found guilty for first-degree murder for Laci and second-degree murder for Connor. In December, the sentencing phase began. The jury deliberated and returned with the harshest punishment, death by lethal injection. The courtroom erupted. Laci's family wept in relief. Scott sat expressionless, as if in denial. The story of Scott and Laci Peterson had begun as a seemingly perfect love story, but it ended as one of America's darkest betrayals. The case left a permanent mark. In 2004, it led to the passage of the Unborn Victims of Violence Act, also called Laci and Connor's Law, recognizing crimes against pregnant women and their unborn children. For Laci's family, the pain never healed, but they fought to preserve her memory and Connor's as symbols of love stolen too soon. Today, Scott Peterson remains in prison, though his death sentence was overturned in 2020 due to jury selection errors. He now serves life without parole. The tragedy of Laci Peterson remains one of the most haunting true crimes of the 2000s, a reminder that behind smiles and promises, darkness can hide. And whenever her name is spoken, people remember the young mother who never got to hold her child and the betrayal that ended both their lives.